Hello, I'm Dr. Sudheendra S G, and welcome. In my work, I get to explore the forces that shape our media. And today, we're going to look at something pretty special. A simple gray box that completely, and I mean completely, reshaped the entertainment world your students are living in right now. So we're going to step back to the mid-90s to really understand how the Sony PlayStation was born and how it kicked off the era of modern gaming.
So how did this whole thing start? Well, you might be surprised to hear it didn't begin with some grand vision. Nope. It all started with a betrayal. See, Sony's entry into the video game world, it wasn't some calculated, planned invasion. It was basically an act of corporate revenge that just accidentally changed everything. So, let's dive right in.
All right, first things first. To really get the impact of this, you got to picture the world back in, say, 1993. The gaming industry, it was a total battlefield. But it was really just a two-horse race between Nintendo and Sega. They were the undisputed kings. And Sony? Well, Sony was a giant in electronics, for sure. Think TVs, stereos, the Walkman, but when it came to video games, they were a complete outsider, not even on the map.
So here's how it all went down. It actually started as a partnership. Sony and Nintendo were working together to create a CD-ROM add-on for the super popular Super Nintendo. This was supposed to be the future, but then, in a pretty stunning move, Nintendo publicly and very abruptly cancels the deal and announces they're partnering with Philips instead. Ouch. Sony felt completely betrayed, but they didn't just tuck their tail between their legs and walk away. Oh no. They took all that research, all that development, and basically said, fine, if we can't join the game, we're going to change the rules entirely. And that, right there, is how the PlayStation was born.
So, to take on these established giants, Sony knew they couldn't just build another console. That would work. They had to build the next generation of console. And they did it by leaning on two revolutionary new tools that would completely redefine what a video game could even be.
Okay, so the first and, honestly, the most important tool in their arsenal was the CD-ROM. The leap in technology here was, well, it was just staggering. We're talking about moving from a little 5-megabyte cartridge to a 700-megabyte CD. To put that in perspective, that's like going from reading a short pamphlet to having an entire library at your fingertips. All of a sudden, games could have these huge, sprawling worlds, high-quality audio, and even full-blown movie-style video sequences. It was a total game changer.
Yeah, just let that number sink in for a second. 700 megabytes. That sheer amount of storage was the key that unlocked the door to bigger, more complex, and way more emotionally resonant game worlds than anyone had ever seen before. The only real trade-off? Well, that's where we get the now infamous loading screen.
The second big tool was a laser focus on 3D polygonal graphics. Now, this is the tech that took games from being these flat, 2D, side-scrolling things into immersive, three-dimensional worlds that you could actually, explore. This was basically the birth of the virtual environments that we now see in almost every single game our students play, from Minecraft all the way to Fortnite.
All right, so with these new tools in hand, Sony jumps into the ring. But this console war, it wasn't just about who had the better tech. It was a battle of strategies. And Sony, the total newcomer, was about to go head-to-head with the established rulers of the gaming world.
So if you look at the competitive landscape back then, each console had something going for it, but they each had a fatal flaw too. You had Sega, who rushed its powerful Saturn console to market, but they totally failed to give game developers the support they needed. It was just too hard to make games for it. Then you had Nintendo. They built a really powerful 64-bit machine, but they stubbornly stuck with those expensive, low-storage cartridges. And really, that one decision, more than anything else, created this massive opening for Sony and their CD-based system to just waltz right in.
But here's the thing. Powerful technology only gets you so far. It opened the door for Sony for sure, but it didn't win them the war. No, the victory was ultimately secured by the games themselves and by Sony's absolutely brilliant strategy of winning over the hearts and minds of the people who actually make the games.
See, unlike their competitors, Sony went out and actively courted third-party developers. They made the PlayStation super easy to create games for, and they built these really powerful alliances. This meant they had a constant stream of exclusive must-have titles from legendary studios. We're talking about Namco with Tekken, Konami with Metal Gear Solid, and maybe most famously, Squaresoft, who brought their blockbuster Final Fantasy series exclusively to the PlayStation.
And man, what games they were. You had titles like Tomb Raider that really showed off the power of 3D. It wasn't just about shooting things. It was about exploring these huge, puzzle-filled ancient ruins. And its hero, Lara Croft, she became this global pop culture icon, transcending gaming completely, and showing up on magazine covers and even in movies.
And then there was Final Fantasy VII. This was the one. This was the game that proved that video games could deliver these epic, emotional, movie-like stories. I mean, it spanned 3 separate CDs. Its sprawling narrative and stunning cinematic cutscenes were just unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. And it was only possible because of the PlayStation's technology.
So let's bring it back to us. As educators, you might be asking, why does this history of some 90s game console really matter to us today? Well, it matters because the principles that drove this revolution, they literally laid the foundation for the entire modern interactive media landscape that our students are so deeply engaged with every single day.
Okay, so let's boil this whole story down into a few key takeaways for us. These are really the core lessons from the PlayStation's rise that help us understand the forces that are still shaping the digital world today. First up, innovation plus accessibility equals success. It's not enough to have cool new tech. It has to be easy for creators to actually use. Sony got this, making its 3D tools easy for developers, while Sega's were just too complex. Second, partnerships drive growth. A platform is only as strong as the content on it. I mean, that's a lesson the modern streaming wars are teaching us all over again, right? Third, immersion is the future. The wild success of cinematic games like Final Fantasy set a brand new standard for storytelling. And finally, adaptability matters a lot. Nintendo's refusal to let go of cartridges, well, it cost them their market dominance.
And that really brings us to our final thought. The next time you look at the games your students are playing, the massive open worlds, the cinematic storytelling, the powerful developer partnerships, you can see the DNA of that little gray box from 1994 all over it. The revolution it started isn't over. Not by a long shot. It's just evolved. Thank you for joining me.